Hello and welcome to Back of the Net. My name is Charlotte Richardson and I am your host for our latest instalment of Some Football Chat. And whilst we have gone many months now without football, here at Back of the Net, we have been trying to bring you as much content as we can to get you chatting, to hear all of your opinions. And I don't think this evening's show is going to disappoint on that front. I am delighted to have two fantastic guests alongside me as we put together Back of the Net's Team of the Season for the 2019-20 campaign. And alongside me, I would like to introduce Ian Dyer, Woking FC's assistant manager, and alongside him, Jodie Brown, who coached for Dagenham and Redbridge over the season as well. Gents, how are you both doing?
Doing well, thank you. Yeah, very good. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah, good too, Charlotte.
Now, I think my biggest challenge is how we're going to get 11 players on a team sheet here, and also to kind of, I guess, be a buffer between the two of you when you want to make your selections, because obviously you both had a great amount of experience within the National League. And before we go on to picking on those 11, I just want to get your thoughts about the competitiveness of the league itself. Ian, do you think we saw probably one of the most competitive divisions in the sort of non-league pyramid, just in terms of each week it was so unpredictable to pick results?
Yeah, I think unpredictability was probably one of the main things. Obviously, you know, being new to the league this season, kind of not knowing what to expect. You know, obviously with big teams in there like your Notts Counties and your Chesterfields and Wrexhams and such like. I think you know, probably what you expected to happen in terms of the top seven come the end of the season. I'm not sure many people would have picked that exact seven. So I think in that respect, it was quite unpredictable, very, very competitive. I think, you know, every week there was really tough, fought out games. And certainly from our own experience, there was never anywhere you went, certainly away from home, where you thought you were going to be in for an easy ride. So certainly trying to pick a team out of all of that has been quite challenging, actually, because every time you kind of think of one player in a position, you kind of, your mind springs back to someone else that performed well against you. So, yeah, certainly a challenge. And I think that probably says just how competitive the division has been this year.
Yeah, and Jodie, I know that you were really hands-on working alongside Peter Taylor at Dagenham and Redbridge. And then when he departed, you led the team before Darryl McMahon's appointment. So you had a lot of experience leading from the front in terms of the National League this season. And how did you enjoy that experience as a coach?
From a coaching perspective and learning, developing, it was just great to work under someone who had been an elite manager. I'd never done it in my life before. I'd worked in academies at a good level and various non-league levels. But one thing that's sort of missing from my own development was to work under someone who had led at the very, very top of the game and just see how they do it and take what you can from them. And, you know, it was a great experience under Peter. In terms of the National League, very much agree with Ian. Not a lot between teams. It was a division where you could quickly find yourself in bad form, but very quickly find yourself in good form, climbing the league and getting in and around the playoffs. Completely contrasting from the season before, where you had Orient, Salford, and probably Fylde as well, who were just outstanding teams, and you kind of knew they were going to be up there from day one, and they fulfilled it.
Well, I think between the two of you, this team is going to look pretty decent by the end of tonight's episode. But don't forget, you can share your opinions too. If there are any players that you think should make selection, do tweet in your thoughts to BOTN. We would love to hear from you and see if we can get them into our starting 11. So with no further ado, then let's look at the position between the sticks, goalkeepers. Firstly, Ian, who stood out for you over the 2019-20 campaign?
Yeah, this was quite a difficult one, and I guess I probably had to pull up the league table and look a little bit on kind of defensive records, and some of them were quite surprising, actually. I know probably Jodie will talk a little bit about Elliot Justin at Dagenham, and I know a lot of people, and I spoke to our goalkeeper coach at Woking, rate him as probably one of the top 2 or 3 goalkeepers in the league. And actually, when you look at their defensive record, I think they conceded the same amount of goals as Harrogate, who were second, which is incredible. So I think when you're judging goalkeepers, it's not just as easy to look at the league table at all kind of times. There was a couple probably for me that stood out. I think you know, Belshaw at Harrogate. Every time I saw him, I was really impressed with him. And I think also Ryan Boot at Solihull, I think they had the best defensive record. So again, you kind of can't go too far away from that. But certainly Dixon was one, Joel Dixon at Barrow, that I think every time again that I watched him either on TV or in live games, that again impressed me. And I think especially being a goalkeeper in a team that's top of the league, when they went on that run, they were there kind of to be shot at. And I think it says a lot. I think he had something like 12 clean sheets in about 18, 19 games when they went on that run. And, to keep doing that when everyone was kind of gunning for them after Christmas, I think, you certainly need a good presence behind your defence. So he was another one for me that really, really stood out.
And Jodie, some praise there for the keeper at Daggers. Is that something that you would emulate from your experience working with him, and any others that caught your eye?
Firstly, with regards to Elliot Justin, he was the club's player of the year last season. Looked very much likely he was going to be the club's player of the year again this season before things came to an end. The thing what I think is so impressive about Elliot is that he definitely wins points for the team. He like goal scorers will get headlines. Elliot has got that capacity to make unbelievable saves, point blank range saves, and he's very, very athletic and dynamic for a tall guy. Makes some unbelievable saves that you don't see other keepers make. Well, I didn't work with other keepers every day, so it's hard to say that. But he's worth 10, 15 points, I think, to Dagenham a season. The year before, he probably earned the points that kept us up. And Dagenham ended up finishing up quite close to the bottom four, as it was this season as well. And I think Elliot probably, and I think everyone involved with the club when I was there and after I was there, would say Elliot probably earned points that would have kept him in the division. I agree with Ian about Dixon. I think it's probably worth mentioning Nathan Ashmore went in at Boreham Wood, and I think it was evident that he had an impact there. I didn't actually see that many of his performances. Obviously, I'm very aware of him as a goalkeeper, but if you looked at their good run, it coincided with when Ashmore went there. So there's a lot of good goalkeepers in the division, but I as much as it may seem biased, I would probably lean towards Elliot simply because he makes saves that win matches.
And that's the thing with goalkeepers, isn't it? It can often be quite a lonely position. And even if you're part of a sort of title leading or promotion chasing team, if you make one slip up or if you're not there for those big moments and levels of concentration, that can obviously be massive moments. So, OK, let's move on to defences, because often the cliche is that attacks win you promotion and then defences win you titles, if I think I've got that right, somewhere along the lines. So if we look at centre backs then, often they can be the nucleus of a team, really, really important roles. Jodie, what centre-backs or which centre-backs caught your eye over the season?
Callum Howe is an obvious one. He was outstanding last year. I think it was Harrogate, and then he signed for Solihull, and he's continued that. He's a leader. He's comfortable to take the ball and drive out of it. He's very strong in the air. He's a threat in the other team's box as well. I think he's been one of the outstanding centre-backs. Reynolds at Barnet, he's a good footballer, can play off both feet, can start your attacks, but he's also another one who's a leader. I think it's important at the back. Again, powerful in the air. And then maybe one sort of that isn't perhaps on the tip of everyone's tongues, Ben Goodliff at Sutton United. We had him at Dagenham the year before, young defender on loan from Wolves. Again, competent in possession, but a very, very natural defender, loves making blocks, loves going and competing in the air, loves making big tackles. Just actually likes defending, and for a 19, 20-year-old, you don't come across that many like that. I think he'll go on to have a really good career. He probably doesn't quite make the National League's best 11, but I think it was pretty impressive what Sutton did this year when they sort of turned around what looked like a really struggling season. And I think they went on a really good run and kept a lot of clean sheets, and Ben would have been a big part of that. But although he probably doesn't make my best 11, I would certainly tip him for having a big future.
Some really good traits there identified by Jodie about what makes, a really valuable centre back. And Ian, any names there that kind of spring up with your sort of thoughts around what type of centre back we would like in our team of the year?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in the league. There's kind of, it's probably going away from what you'd class as kind of the old-fashioned centre halves that are just kind of there just to head the ball away and just smash it as far as they can. I think, you take Callum Reynolds at Barnet. He's a good example of a player that's got a really good balance about his game. He can do those things. He puts his body on the line. He's decent in the air, but he can also kind of bring the ball out and play as well. And I think some of those attributes, especially with some of the younger defenders in the league, have really caught my eye this year. For me, the best individual performance of a centre-half against one of our teams this year was Liam Hogan at Stockport. Now, he won't get in the team because obviously he came later into the season from Salford. But, I mean, I'd expect him probably for the next couple of years to really kind of dominate in terms of that position for them. It's a really good signing. I'm glad Jodie talked about Ben Goodliff. He's another one that we were really impressed with any time we saw Sutton, and we saw them quite regularly, obviously being quite local. I think they conceded 42 goals, which is better than kind of 4 of the top 7 teams. So their defensive record on that run that Jodie spoke about was really, really impressive. And the other ones that stood out to me were the 2 at Harrogate, Smith and Hall. Again, 2 kind of big, imposing centre halves. Smith, I think they signed from Barnsley, a young centre back, and doing really well there. And then there was others. The guys at Yeovil and Notts County had a couple as well, kind of ex-Premier League defenders. But again, I think they were kind of in and out with injuries, and they had to rotate a little bit, so probably didn't have the same consistency. But certainly Callum Howe would be one that I'd put in that team just because of their defensive record and him as an individual. But there's lots of good ones. You even look further down the league. I like Locko at Dover. Kevin Locko is a really good kind of left-sided centre half as well. So it's tough to pick just 2. It was probably one of the most difficult areas because there are so many good ones in the division.
And it's really interesting.
Sorry, Charlotte. What about your ones, Ian? Would you mention yours?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, not going to put the Woking boys in the team, but yeah, I'd certainly think Moussa Diarra had a really good season with us, and I'd have him pretty close to most of the ones that we've mentioned there in terms of consistency and in terms of the skills that he's got. He's certainly stepped up this year and has performed consistently really well. I think it's been kind of another breakthrough season for him, so he would certainly be in that category of the players we've spoken about there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought they were strong, your centre-backs.
It's really interesting for me, and I'm sure for our viewers as well, to listen about the kind of traits coaches now look for in centre-back pairings. Like you made the point, Ian, it's not necessarily the traditional kind of head on a stick, puts their body in the way. And some of the selections that you've made, and I'm sure we'll get into that final 11, are actually ball players, and they're ever present at the back, but they also contribute down the other end as well. And I think we've seen that with pretty much every example you've named there. Those centre-backs also contribute from set pieces and score their teams lots of goals. So that's really, really interesting, and obviously such a big important part of a team. If we look then towards right backs, who has stood out for you this season, Ian?
For me, there was 3 standouts. Kane Smith at Boreham Wood, I think had a really, really good season. They won on a great run. And obviously got themselves up into those playoff positions, and I think would have certainly finished there and been a threat. And he was good. I think they changed their shape, so he went from kind of right back to right wing back and adapted to both positions really well. But good footballer, comes forward with the ball. I think he chipped in with a few goals as well, and really dynamic as a fullback. The one that I kind of really liked to watch was Kioso at Hartlepool, who ended up getting a move to Luton, I think in January. And again, we played them on a live TV game, and he was man of the match. Every time he got the ball, he was a threat. He really kind of pushed us back, and he wanted to drive forward. Really athletic player, and I think probably epitomises the modern day fullback and what the requirements are going to be in the next kind of 5 to 10 years in that position. So there'd be certainly two that would be a standout amongst kind of quite a few others. That they were the two that I'd always look at and think, they're in terms of that position certainly really strong.
And Jodie, what about yourself?
Yeah, Kioso was an impressive performer. I think the most interesting thing about him is I think he's only 19 and played near enough 100 National League games. So it just shows that alternate route into the Football League at Luton in the Championship, rather than coming through the academy system and waiting and playing lots of 23s football. He's played 100 games or 80 games in the National League and got a really positive opportunity at Luton. So yeah, he was impressive, tremendous athlete. I don't want to just sort of palm him off as just an athlete, because he was good in 1v1 situations. He could beat players, he could get crosses in, he would make the back post in attacking phases as well. Really bombed on and was he is a very bright prospect. The only one I've got to add to that was Richard Brindley at Notts County. I just like him as a footballer. He plays the game in a way it looks quite effortless. He's really good technically, really comfortable. Goes through the gears pace-wise quite comfortably. Sort of 1 minute he's jogging, next minute he's on the overlap. Great acceleration. He's had a few of his own issues. I think he come out and spoke about mental health issues and stuff, because it's not so long ago he was playing in the Championship. But a good footballer, and if you're a team who enjoys possession, I think he'd be high up on your list as a right back.
And Jodie, you make a really good point there about the pool of young talent within the National League. And I think we've spoken about it on the show a lot about how non-league is now becoming a breeding ground for, teams to establish themselves and to go up the pyramid, but also for individuals to be spotted. And I just wanted to get your thoughts quickly on that note around Kane Smith, who Ian identified, because he was hotly tipped by the non-league paper. Our friends there thought he would have a good season, and he had a really good spell, didn't he, at Hitchin Town, and then made that step up. Yeah. So is he someone that you think we should consider for our final 11 as well?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I didn't want to go over old ground because Ian spoke about it.
It's good to get your thoughts on him as well.
At length. I think he might have missed a little bit of the season early on, did he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
He come back after injury, but he hit the ground running, and again, probably coincided with Boreham Wood's climb up the table. As Ian mentioned, he's probably like a complete fullback. He offers plenty going forward, and he's a strong defender as well. So yeah, he's definitely one that again was probably got. Luke Garrard won't be too pleased us going on about too many other players, but probably got an opportunity to move into the Football League, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, Boreham Wood rewarded him with a contract at the start of the season. So, he's really paid that loyalty back, because like you say, I think his season started off with an injury, and being able to kind of turn that around and enjoy such a successful campaign obviously makes him hotly tipped to get into our team of the year. Switching over then to left backs. Anyone catching your eye? Anyone that immediately springs to mind to steal that position? Ian, if you wouldn't mind going through first with some of your suggestions.
I found this one quite difficult, actually, because there was quite a few players that you would assume would be in the mix that kind of had on and off seasons due to injury. If you look at McCrory at Notts County, experienced left back, and Dickinson at Yeovil as well, who certainly impressed me that the couple of times we played them. Kind of they were a bit in and out with certain injuries. Another one I really like is Elliot Johnson at Barnet. I worked in the academy there as he was coming through into the first team, and was really kind of highly rated then, and he's kind of made a good career at the club and has got a lot of appearances there. And again, he was a little bit in and out, I think, in terms of injuries and everything else. So it's quite a tough position. I'd have to mention Josh Casey at our place as well. I think in terms of consistency, kind of week in, week out, gives you a good level of performance, and certainly stepped up to the level and did really well. So it was tough. I think probably the one that stands out both in terms of consistency, if you're looking at a player that's played a lot and had a good influence on their team, is the lad Kitching at Hartlepool. I think again that the times we played them, he was always a threat, and was really the way they played really forced us back. And I think he's 6 foot plus, so he's probably not got the frame of what you'd imagine a kind of a fullback to have, and he was a threat in a number of different reasons because of his size as well. So he was probably one that finishes just above the others for me, just in terms of the fact that he did play and he had that longevity over the course of the season.
Yeah, and I know that Hartlepool have been really keen to secure his services because after a tough first season, he was flying this year at Victoria Park. And Jodie, did you get to witness any of his performances this season at Dagenham when you came against him?
Yeah, played Hartlepool twice whilst I was still involved. He was always someone that we highlighted in the week running up to the game. He plays a big part in their possession, gets very, very high, sort of forces their wide player inside. And as Ian said, he can pin you back. Good cross of the ball. He is big, so he's an aerial threat as well. We beat him early in the season at home, but then when we went up there away, when they changed the manager, he actually scored the winner, Kitchen. Little 1-2 off the striker, which shows you how high up the pitch he gets. Followed his pass into the box and finished well. So, I liked him a lot. And as Ian said, he played a lot of games as well, which I think is quite important when you're talking about teams of the season. I would mention Sorba Thomas at Boreham Wood. He was a forward, but I think he played around 15 to 20 games as a left wing back. And certainly an exciting prospect as a wing back. You probably wouldn't play him in a back four, although other people might have different opinions. But I think if you were looking for a free at the back, 5 across there, then he would definitely be someone you should consider as a wing back. But no, I'd lean towards Kitchen.
Well, I'll tell you what, with the names already mentioned, we've got a pretty decent defence in place and one that will contribute a number of goals as well. So let's move into midfield. Central midfielders. Again, this is probably one of the tougher positions to nail down. But Jodie, if you don't mind going first with some of your suggestions, standout performers, I think there's probably one that I can guess both of you will mention, probably perhaps the player of the season, or player of the league rather. John Rooney is a name that I know that we've spoken about offline. Tell us your thoughts about him as a player, something quite special.
I think he's just got a really good balance there, haven't they? In that he fits their philosophy. I've seen him at other clubs as well, and he hasn't necessarily been as impressive as he has been at Barrow. But again, technically a good footballer, good range of passing, can handle the ball, can get goals, can take set plays. He's impressive, and I'm pretty sure that all the managers and coaches around the league would probably identify him quite quickly, but it's an easy call to make, I think. We spoke about Harry Buterman at Sutton. He's a goal machine, really, from midfield. He's been doing it consistently for a long time. Makes the penalty area, scores important goals. I don't think you can ignore that. One that I liked was Cameron King at Halifax. They more often than not played a midfield three, but Cameron was a youth player at Norwich City when they were in the Premier League, and he won the FA Youth Cup in the same team as like the Murphy brothers, who were at Cardiff and West Brom, I think. But he had some kind of health issue. I think it was a heart issue. He was in the Scotland under-21 squad, and he had to come out of football altogether, and it looked like he was never going to play again. I then, without going on too much, and then saw his name pop up for Thetford Town, who were like step 5 of the pyramid, and I thought, that's interesting. Cameron King's back playing step 5, and I told so many people, honestly, like including people that I worked with, you need to go and look at this lad. Like, honestly, he was on the edge of the first team in the Premier League. He won the FA Youth Cup. He was in the Scotland under-21 squad. He only came out of the game for health reasons, still very young. He's playing step 5, non-contract, probably on about 50 quid a week. Got to look at him. And then before I knew it, he turned up at Halifax. When we played him, his ability to take the ball in the half turn, even under pressure, to play one touch, like round corners and follow his pass. Really, really bright player. And then as the season went on, I kept my eye on him to see how he progressed. Started scoring a lot of important goals up there. That televised game, he got the man of the match and scored a brace. One of them was sort of 40-yard first time volley. But really good player. And if his health concerns are all clear now, like, he's another one. Keep your eye on him. I suspect he'll be back in the Football League before too soon.
I think that's what's so appealing about the non-league games. You don't quite know what stars in the making you're going to be watching, and those that can do their recruitment really, really well will attract the likes of that and then provide them with a platform to move forwards on as well. And Ian, just to pick up on Jodie's choice there of Harry Buterman. I mean, he contributed almost a third of Sutton's goals that season. What an amazing asset. Now, I'm not having any influence on your final 11, but that really is something to be said, isn't it, to contribute that amount of goals from central midfield.
I saw two of them firsthand when they beat us 6-2 actually. So yeah, thanks for that.
Sorry, yeah, bring that one up.
With this position, I think there's obviously the stats will dictate, I think, the two that get in, because overwhelmingly, the two we've mentioned in terms of Rooney and Buterman, I think Rooney was on 18, Buterman 15 or 16, and I mean that's outstanding. Both kind of on for 20 goals from a midfield position. I know they both take penalties, but you've still got to tuck them away, and some of them would have been big penalties, especially in Rooney's case. So I think there's certainly two standouts and will be hard to shift in this team, and certainly have both found systems. I think Jodie made a good point about Rooney. I just think the system suited so many of their players. We'll come on to some of the other ones probably later, but you see that quite a lot in non-league football where players maybe don't hit it off at certain clubs because maybe they're not utilised or deployed in the right way, and they go to another club and maybe a bigger part of it, and suddenly you get numbers like he's put up this year. So I think Ian Evatt probably deserves a lot of credit for that in the way they've utilised him this year. But it's interesting in the midfield area because you've got the real blend in the league between kind of the old heads, the experienced campaigners that have been around quite a long time, and then you've got these exciting young players coming through, like Jodie said there with King, which is really exciting as well to see kind of who's going to break through and stamp their authority in games. One of the hardest midfielders I think we came up against was Yeovil's kind of diamond shape, and certainly Jimmy Smith and Charlie Lee in there are two really experienced ex-league kind of campaigners that both had good seasons there, and they're obviously on for the playoffs as well. And another one I'd mention that is a lad I worked with a few times, both at Barnet, and then we had him on loan at Hampton and Richmond, was Jack Taylor, who obviously then got his move to Peterborough during the season. I'm sure he'll go from strength to strength. Great lad, highly technical player, really good passer of the ball, gets around the midfield, and it was no surprise to see kind of league clubs coming in and take him and looking to take him during the season as well. And I think he would have gone on to really be a catalyst towards Barnet pushing into those playoff places as well. But yeah, there was it's a really good kind of mixture of experience and youth in that position, and it'd be interesting to kind of see how it goes as kind of managers change their style in the next couple of years, whether a lot of teams go for kind of more energy, more youth in those areas. I mean, Barrow's a great example in terms of the loan system, about bringing young loan players in and fitting them to a system that was really, really effective. So, we talked earlier about that loan market and how exciting it is, and it's kind of a great opportunity for young players to kind of climb the ladder. And I think Barrow have been a good example of that with some of the youngsters they've got in from Blackburn this year.
It's really fascinating having you guys on this evening's episode, because you give a really good insight into how it all looks from a coach's perspective, because I guess just as a supporter we might just see kind of individuals and not necessarily think about the system and think how they're moulding, and again all that work that goes on the training ground, a kind of bigger picture. So I think that's what makes your selections all the more interesting. So looking elsewhere in our midfield, now one of the clubs that we haven't mentioned yet is Bromley. Now they got off to an absolutely flying start in the 2019-20 campaign, particularly in attack. I think the kind of occasions that I watched them, they would just had so much pace, bundles of it. And I know a name that you guys do want to speak about is Rico Hackett-Fairchild. Now, Ian, do you want to tell us about why I've got his name written down here and why potentially he could be one that we select in our starting 11?
Another kind of young, exciting prospect that kind of graced the league this season, I guess. And again, no surprise that league clubs were kind of queuing up to take him at the earliest opportunity. Yeah, just an exciting player, I guess, kind of a player that that I admire, because we look for similar traits in our wide players in terms of good 1v1 ability. Really, he was always positive, always aggressive to try and drive at defences and look to go past people in and around the box. And I think probably his finishing ability as well really developed over the course of the games that he played, and that kind of stood out. I remember he scored a late one at Dagenham, didn't he? Jodie won't thank me for that, but I remember that one on TV, and composure going through at the end in the last minute for a young player, which is a really good trait for him to kind of enable him to kick his game on. But yeah, he impressed me every time I saw him. And they're a really well organised team, Bromley. Neil Smith and his staff do such a good job there about getting them organised and really hard to beat, especially off the ball. So to have players like that, good 1v1 players that can change a game at the drop of a hat, I think was absolutely key to their quick start of the season, and he was a massive part of that with the goals that he scored.
And Jodie, if I could ask you to take a look about how we would complement that on the left flank, any players sticking out for you about who we should put in our final 11? Because now we've got to think, haven't we, about this system we're putting in place now. I'm learning on the job.
Obviously, me and Ian have already spoken, and there's one at Notts County who we sort of both discussed on that left side. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Baldwin,
oh yeah, the Dutch winger, Enzio Baldwin winger.
Baldwin.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. Sorry, my pronunciation's shocking.
I probably should have done a bit of research, but can you just let me know? Is he the one who was at Crawley the year before?
I think they signed. I think he was, yeah, and I think Crawley might have signed him from Holland, from a second division team in Holland. He came for decent money, I think, and yeah.
Yeah, because I went and watched when Harry Kewell was manager. I went in at Crawley for 3 or 4 days just to observe, and I think it was him. And yeah, he's a powerful, direct, a good wide player. I only saw Notts County once this season, and yeah, his athleticism and his directness carrying the ball was a threat. But one I liked was Rodney. I think it's Devonte Rodney. Yeah. He was a fringe player at Salford the season before. I mean, that's no disrespect, because Salford were an exceptional team. But he came on loan this year to Stockport, and then I think possibly in Jan he went back to Salford and then came out to Halifax. Now, when we played him at Stockport, his strength, his ability to go both ways from the left-hand side, his ability to back in and pin fullbacks, time on the ball. I just thought on that particular day, and again, when you don't work with these players every day, it's hard to judge him. I can't claim to have watched every left winger in the league really closely, but Rodney, for me, it was an outstanding individual performance. He didn't score, and I think they beat us 1-0 with a sort of 93rd minute header from a corner. So it wasn't that it was an obviously good performance. It was one of them where you're sitting there and you just think he's got a beating of our fullbacks. Even when we double up on him, he's got the beating of them. He looked a really good player to me. And again, like I've mentioned a few, he's a young one who I think, given time and given appearances, will go on.
Well, I guess it's an eye-opening thing about assembling and building a squad and building a team is the different traits that you look for. So not only the technical, but the ability to offer leadership to your team and the ability to be able to come off the bench and make an impact as well. There are so many different things and different components that go into making a successful team. And ultimately, the goal of a team is to stick the ball in the back of the net. So let's move on to our strikers. Jodie, who springs to mind to lead our front line?
Well, the obvious one's Quigley at Barrow. Powerful, makes good forward runs, good finisher, aggressive. I like him a lot, but again, it's a really obvious one. I've been sort of following. Is it Kishiminga? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I've been following him for quite a long time. So in my short spell as Welling manager in the National League, he got offered to me on loan. He was only, I think he was just turned 17, and he was at MK Dons, but he'd scored 50 for their youth team that year, and they really felt he was ready to play senior football. And I was in the process of getting it done when I got the sack. So I never got to work with him. But as Ian will know, you know, when you have these when you've done a bit of research, you then follow that player for forever, really. So I sort of saw him at Oxford City, scoring regularly, and I would watch the clips. And again, he was one that I couldn't have spoke highly enough when sort of advising people, someone you could go and get for a bargain, you know, that isn't gonna break your budget. Credit to Luke Garrard. I'm not saying I recommended him to Luke, by the way. I'm just saying credit to him that he actually took the risk and went and got him. He's one-touch finishing, like really, really sharp and instinctive around the penalty area. He's quick. He will definitely end up in the Football League. I'm willing to go as far as saying that he will definitely end up there at some point, whether it's with Boreham Wood or whether it's getting a transfer. Really exciting, and probably only 20 years old. So he's one that I would bring to the table.
And Ian, how about yourself? Who would you be wanting to put forward for our final 11?
Yeah, I mean, Quigley's the obvious one, isn't he? I think I looked at his stats. He's probably one of the only ones in the top 5 or 6 of the top scorers list that doesn't take penalties, which is probably why Rooney's kind of goal return so high. I think he got 20 without scoring a penalty, which is obviously quite impressive. I also think, like Jody said, when you're leading a line for a team up at that end of the league, especially with the way they play, there's a lot of kind of emphasis on you being that person, and you know, certainly a lot of pressure on him taking the chances that they were creating for him. So he's probably the obvious one. What's interesting about some of the others is there's actually quite a few players that have stepped up from the National League South and are quite high up in the scoring charts. Obviously, you talked about Chishamanga there, who's a player we actually tried to sign a couple of times as well over the last 2 or 3 years. I think everyone's kind of had a look at him with what he did at Oxford City, especially last season. Reece Murphy's another one, obviously at Chelmsford last year and has stepped up. Big move to Yeovil, and again, a lot expected of him, and he's kind of weighed in with a lot of goals. I think his is the best goals per minute ratio in the league, again, which says kind of quite a lot about him. He missed a few games. There's other players as well. I think, you know, I mentioned Jake Hyde at Woking. I think he was on for probably scoring 20 by the end of the season. You know, led the line really well for us. Ini Effion's another one I like from Dover. Scored some big goals for them, some match-winning goals, and then probably one from a little bit further down the league as well, Danny Whitehall, who scored obviously a lot of goals for Maidenhead in the team that struggled a bit this year, and he seemed to always kind of be scoring when they were scoring, and scored quite a large percentage of theirs goals. And Jamie Reid from Torquay's another one. I think again missed quite a lot of football, but is a goal machine and will always score goals as well. So, you know, at that end of it was quite competitive. There was probably 3 or 4 real standouts in terms of goal return and performances over the course of the season.
Yeah, definitely. There is clearly so much talent in the National League, and I guess we're all counting down into the future when we get to be able to watch it again. But until that moment, let's just reflect on what was 2019 and 2020 season. And I guess when you have all of this talent and you have all these different talented players at your disposal, you need a leader and you need a manager. And I think it will be interesting to get your thoughts on this, about who you would select to lead this team. And Jodie, I know I've always found it fascinating listening to you for the shows about your kind of tactical understanding, and you've opened my eyes certainly when we've watched games together about how teams set up. Was there any one standout manager, coach and setup that you encountered during your time at Dagenham and Redbridge that you'd like to kind of tell us about?
First thing I'd say is I think there's a wealth of good coaches and managers at the level.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
It's really easy to sort of just cast them aside and, because it's National League, but there's a lot of talent there. And the thing with football is the same with players. Until you get the opportunity, you'll never know. And, you know, we see if you're good, you're good. Like Danny Cowley, I know he gets spoken about probably a little bit too often, but the fact that 1 minute he was at Concord, spent a season at Braintree, gets a move to Lincoln, who were really underperforming, poor National League side. Now he's at Huddersfield in the Championship. Not because he didn't do a good job. Obviously, he did a very good job. But I think even if you spoke to Danny, he wouldn't what I know from speaking to Danny, he doesn't think he's some sort of magician. You know, he works very, very hard, and he's done his apprenticeship, going through the levels and the various experiences you gain at those levels. So first thing I'd say is there's loads of good managers, but I don't think you can look beyond Evitt, Barrow. And the reason I say it is, I think in an ideal world, most people would want to play the brand of football that he's produced up there. You can't always, or you might not feel as though you're going to be given the time to produce it. You might not have the personnel to do it. So not everyone can do it, but he's been brave, he's done it, and he's reaping the success of it. And it's not been an overnight process either. You know, he hasn't gone out and just bought the best players in the league. He's, as we've mentioned a number of times in this discussion, he's brought in players to fit his philosophy, be it on loan or be it experienced players from the level. And we never know what other teams' resources are. We sort of can talk about it and make our own judgments, but I think they're far from having the biggest budget in the league, yet they're leading the league. So I find it very hard to look beyond him. There's a few others. You've got to mention Luke Garrard at Boreham Wood, young manager. I think he's only about 34, 35, and they're sat in the playoff places at Boreham Wood. Another team that probably, you know, when you're talking of the teams Ian mentioned at the start, the Hartlepool, the Chesterfields, the Wrexhams, the resources and the fan bases that these clubs have to be competing with them, you're doing a very, very good job.
And Ian, what are your thoughts on that? Is Ian Evatt the choice for you? Is there anyone else you'd like to take the opportunity to shout out from your experience with Woking over the past season?
Yeah, I think Garrard's a good shout from Jody there. I think certainly got to give him credit for what he's done. Obviously, as a young manager, you know, credit to him. You know, he's got some experienced players in that squad at Boreham Wood. So to manage them, manage them and get them playing and winning games is credit to him. And another one I'd probably mention is Pete Wild at Halifax. I think, you know, again, another team that's kind of a sum of their parts, really, and very similar to us at Woking. You know, every player puts in 100% of a shift for him week in, week out. You know, and the fact that they were up there in the playoff places that deep into the season, I think is a lot of credit to him and how he set them up and kind of motivated them. Certainly from the times we played them, it was one of the toughest games because you knew they were going to be relentless in the way that they worked, especially off the ball. But I think Ian Evatt, has to be the one. I mean, I'll tell you a story. We played them in August, towards the end of August, and we beat them 3-2. I think they were disappointed because they probably thought they were the better team on the day, and you probably couldn't argue with that. And we went top, and I think that put them in the bottom four at the time. And they then lost to Hartlepool the following week, which I think might have even put them in the bottom two. And like Jody said, the word is brave, really. There, he very much stuck to his beliefs, his philosophy. He, you know, whether it was a change of system, but it was never a change of style from him, and he very much stuck to the way they wanted to do things. And I guess, like Jody said, it's almost the holy grail of coaching to play great football the way you want it to be played, but also to be successful to that level. And I think they went and lost one out of their next 23 games after that and went on an incredible run and almost went from bottom to top of the league and sustained it. So I think he deserves an unbelievable amount of credit for that, because obviously, you know, myself and Jody will know how hard it is to win one game in that division on a Saturday, let alone to continue to do that, you know, which says a lot really for him as a manager.
Yeah, definitely that. And I think for any external observers, just the kind of way that on the field performances have uplifted everything about that football club, the attendances they were beginning to attract, the impact they were having on their local community. Yeah. And obviously, I'm sure if Ian was to say, he'd say it was a team effort, but ultimately having that leadership and having someone at the front who's going to be brave enough to follow their principles. And interestingly, like you say, Ian, pointing out that it's not all smooth sailing. They obviously had a bumpy period, but to stick through it is really admirable. And I think he is a very good choice to manage our team of the season. So we're going to leave it there. I think we've just about got our starting 11 there. So hopefully it'll be coming up on the screen. The final choice is your final 11. Ian, how do you feel with that setup? They're going to do well in this league, right?
You'd like to think so.
Can you guarantee me promotion?
There's not too much defensive balance across that kind of midfield and front areas. I think we'd be all right when we have the ball. Not too much if we turn the ball over. But yeah, certainly an exciting team in possession. There's plenty of goals in there from all across that midfield and up the front as well. And I don't think. Well, I'm sure you can make an argument for other players that have missed out. It was certainly tough in several positions. But no, I like the look of that team. It's got a good kind of blend of youth and experience in there, and certainly some really highly technical, skillful players as well, which I think would play some nice, attractive football.
And Jodie, we won't ever really know what the end of the 2019-20 season would have looked like, but from the months we did get, we got a fantastic advertisement for non-league football, and picking out these 11 and Ian there. Are there any final thoughts from yourself?
Well, yeah, no, you make a good point there. We didn't get to see the whole season, so there was still some very, very big games to come. So some of the boys that maybe haven't featured in that team, our excuse for them not featuring is that perhaps if they'd had another 10 games in the playoffs, we might have forced them in.
Oh, well, gents, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts this evening. It's not an enviable task, and it was certainly interesting for me to listen to them. And thank you to everyone that has sent in their messages, their thoughts and ideas about players that maybe we have included and those we haven't. Please do champion your cause. We'll be online on social media over the next few days anyway, sharing this evening's debate and getting your insight and ideas as well. So thank you very much, both of you, for joining me this evening, and take care while we still continue to miss our football. But for now, thank you for tuning in to Back of the Net. We are going to be back again on Monday, where I'm delighted to say I'm going to be joined by Jim Cooper and Frank Wilson as we have our own little chat about Team of the Season for the Isthmian League. So bear with us as we put together that debate, because I think there's going to be lots more opinions shared there as well. But until next time, take care, and we'll see you again very soon.